Call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Elgin City Council for January 28th, 2026. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmembers Alfaro,
Here.
Dixon,
Present.
Good,
Here.
Martinez,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Powell, Stefan,
Here.
Thorne,
Here.
Mayor Captain.
Here, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of January 7th, 2025, special committee of the whole meeting.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, clerk please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 8-0. Approval of the minutes of the meeting of January 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, clerk please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, the motion's approved 8-0. We have time for a public comment this evening. Sherry Liskey is signed.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Liskey. I live in Elgin. So, well, here we are in 2026, and the fix is in. Where is the draft of the welcoming ordinance that we've actually been waiting for quite a few years? Oh, yes, and the chief really should have been at Maple Lane while the residents were being tear gassed and pepper sprayed by the federal agents. Or were they really federal agents? Were those cameras turned on? No $2 coconut paletta is going to reverse that erosion of public trust. So a community forum happened and people bared their souls, including children who uttered the age-old phrase, "It isn't fair." Not only is it not fair, but it's not right. So what's that you say? Spineless leadership is not right. Law enforcement worship is not right. What is right is standing up for your community, speaking up for your community, your neighbors, your family, your friends. Do not be afraid. It's not obstruction, it's free speech, true service, and protection. Hold the government and the state accountable. Shine a light on the truth and let your light shine. Do not be afraid. But canisters are turning into live ammo. So what we need is the fire department to start offering stop the bleed and first aid and CPR classes for free so that the brave can go on blowing their whistles and holding their phones. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on the agenda this evening is a presentation. It's regarding the Americans with Disability Act Right-of-Way Transition Plan. Public Services Director Mike Pubens is here with the city's consultant Don Kostelek of Vitruvian Planning, and both of them will be presenting on the city's plans for identifying and assessing barriers that may impede accessibility on roads, sidewalks, crosswalks, and other components of the public right-of-way. We'll be developing we'll be providing practical, innovative solutions to enhance accessibility throughout the city, consistent with Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. Good evening, Mr. Pubens.
Good evening. Thank you, Manager Kozel, Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity tonight. I closed my laptop. You gave such a great introduction to that. I don't need to say a whole lot more. I am here with Don Kostelek from Vitruvian Planning. Also with us tonight is Borja Gonzalez from CMAP, Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. This whole program was funded through a CMAP technical assistance grant to local agencies. So it was a great benefit to us and a great program. Borja has been our liaison and project manager for CMAP. Don has been the technical expert. He's really done the deep dive into this process and produced what is really, I think, going to be a very beneficial document and a guide to us as we move forward throughout the years. This isn't a quick fix. This is a long-term plan for us to identify and remove barriers to those with disabilities. So with that, I'm going to ask Don to come forward. He's going to walk through a few slides, and then we'll gladly take some questions.
Thanks, Mike. Again, for the record, Don Kostelek with Vitruvian Planning. Thanks for having us here tonight and for the last year of support from Mike and other city staff to get to this point with the undertaking of this. So a little bit of background of just what is this, why is this? We're going into the 36th year since the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed by law. There are 5 titles within that act that cover things from employment to private businesses to communications, and Title II is what applies to state and local governments like the city of Elgin, Kane County, school districts, parks districts, library districts, and the like. There are several components of that that are requirements for municipalities to undertake, and the 2 highlighted in blue are really policy related concerning designation of an ADA coordinator. That's a point person that if there's a complaint or something even more formal, it goes to them and they can direct it to the appropriate city staff. And with that is what's called an ADA notice and grievance procedure that just outlines a policy for those reviews and noticing the city's intent under ADA. And so this piece is another part of that, and there's 3 real key components that are required under the law that are wrapped up into this what's called Plan for Accessible Streets and Sidewalks. One is a self-evaluation, and that's essentially turning a mirror on yourself and going, hey, based on what we have today, and in this case, streets and sidewalks, what are our current conditions? And that's to identify what they term barriers to accessibility. I'll talk a little bit about what that means. And they also recognize you're not going to go fix everything tomorrow and add a few more Midwest winters, and you're always going to be chasing something. So you're never going to have a perfect system. And the reason it's called a transition plan is recognizing you will transition your system to compliance over time. And in some cases, that's kind of a rolling cycle just because conditions are going to degrade on the streets. And at some point in the future, the standards that Mike and others have to follow may change. So kind of the key parts of this, one, being compliant with this under the law, especially through CMAP, maintains your overall federal funding eligibility for that. And CMAP a few years ago looked at the Chicago region as a whole, and of the 270 so municipalities, 200 roughly meet the size requirements, 50 or more employees that require such a plan. And even there, only about 10% in the region had one or a recent one that was considered. So that's why they started this grant program. So feeling like, wow, we're getting to this now. No, you're not alone. In some cases, things are just outdated and getting updated. And then you were also one of the first 12 in the region with this program to go pick me, pick me, pick me. And so far, I believe Elgin is the largest city population-wise under CMAP's program. On the right is just some demographic profiles of both reporting from the census of people with disabilities as well as other populations that may be more dependent on the sidewalk network and therefore impacting them. So out of 114,000 residents and nearly 39,000 households, you've got about 13,600 households, around 1 in 3, with access to either no vehicle or one vehicle. Around 8,300 people who employed either work from home, take transit, or walk and bike to work. And if you look at things like work from home rates, they've dramatically gone up in the last few years with COVID. We'll see if those change back to normal. On the disabilities front, about 10%, 11,000 residents report having some type of disability, and about 5,000 residents report having more than one disability. And then about 4,000 are over the age of 65 and report having a disability, which is certainly not uncommon with an older population. And then the bullets there are just the different types of disabilities that are reported, just to give you a reflection of the numbers within the city of Elgin. Some of that's not accounting people that, commute here daily and use those services, come here for medical care and visit the city. And obviously we don't have that kind of data, but you can start to see the daily magnitude of how facilities can impact a wide variety of people within the community. So some of the goals, one, give an up-to-date inventory of the streets. In 2022, you as a city employed a company to go get mobile LiDAR imagery of all of your streets. And so we were able to use that data to calculate the very technical measurements for sidewalks, for curb ramps, for driveways, even for the height and reach for pedestrian push buttons at traffic signals. So one, we're able to build upon and use data that you already had in place. Determine the overall level of need. That's the snapshot. So if we said, hey, if you were going to spend everything tomorrow to make your sidewalk system fully compliant, the estimate would be around $95 million. And that's kind of a rotating target. You're always chasing that because of infrastructure degradation. So don't feel like that's a bad number. And when you see more detailed figures, if you look at the detailed plan, percentages and things are not out of line with most places. You have a big system to deal with, which is a challenge in and of itself. Meeting the federal and CMAP requirements. If you're going to be going for, say, federal grants or other things through CMAP, they want to make sure that municipalities are in compliance with the federal laws for this, which is what prompted them to start doing this program. And given the need, the $95 million, the goal is to identify priorities for the city to implement over time, and we have a set of priority routes that I'll address in a second. And then if you go into things like your recently adopted strategic plan, your comprehensive plan, and even your parks and recreation plan, there's a lot of goals in there for a more livable, safer, accessible city. So this really falls in line with some of those other efforts that you've put forth recently. As I mentioned with CMAP, part of the regional grant program to help cities with Title II requirements, you were one of the first 12 to do that. And they are also convening all types of regional training and other programs that you're able to tap into either from a working group and others. Don't feel like you're alone. It's a very technical and it can be a very intimidating subject area. And then you've also had concurrent with this the active mobility plan. And what that plan is looking at is more bigger picture types of things. So for example, weirdly enough, under ADA, the absence of a sidewalk on a street like Bowes Road is not considered an ADA compliance issue, even though I think we would all argue that you can make your community more accessible by putting a sidewalk on Bowes Road. ADA says if it's in place, it must be compliant. So our plan didn't as much look at where the sidewalks are not, especially since that plan was going on. But I do believe and would recommend that as you consider future budgets, as Mike considers budgets, you might consider as a community a greater value to new sidewalks on a busy arterial versus replacing old sidewalks on a side street, just because the risk and the opportunity for the community to make its system better is there, but that's more of a decision you can make for that. We have exchanged with that team the results of our surveys because certainly people were commenting about absence of sidewalks and needing more crossings, and they are incorporating some of our findings into that plan as well. So just a little bit of the background on here. This is the census tracts within the city of Elgin, and the darker blue are those with the higher percentage of residents reporting a disability. So those with the darkest royal, or what you call cubby blue, 15% or more is reporting that, and the scale kind of goes down. So you definitely see a clustering in kind of that northwest sector. And in the full plan, in the appendix, there is demographic data at the census tract level for more than one disability, for age, and for some of those other metrics I showed you. And we used these to help inform how we identified projects and the ranking of them for this plan. But just to let you see a snapshot of where that is. From a public engagement standpoint, we made around 1,100 total connections over the last year, primarily through website views and about 300 surveys completed. We had 48 public meeting attendees in a series of meetings that we had clustered in May, September, and December, as well as we did outreach to 6 different local organizations that were stakeholders for that, and that included the Elgin Hispanic Network, PACE, Elgin Community College, their disability student services, the Downtown Neighborhood Association, Elgin Cares, PADS of Elgin, and the Northern Illinois Special Recreation Association. We also had steering committee members from the Downtown Association, two are your neighborhood associations, the City Public Services and Parks and Rec, PADS of Elgin, and one member of the Board of Trustees. We provided Spanish translation for the survey, as well as had translators at each of the public meetings. The night we did the downtown market was on their Hispanic Heritage or Hispanic Celebration Night. I forget the formal title of that. So that met a requirement of ADA to get public input on this, do your best, and work with organizations to understand the needs and interests of those with disabilities in your community as well as others. So a little bit of background. I mentioned these two things, updating of you just utilize the data you had from the full system scan and the estimate of 95 million for that. So what that looks like in total is you have around 573 miles of sidewalks that probably range in age from something built 120 years ago to something built in a relatively new subdivision. About 199 miles of those have some sort of issue that was identified that would need to justify either a reconstruction or a repair. Around 2,300 what we call sidewalk obstructions. Those could be trees, utility poles, signs, and other things that restrict the width of a sidewalk below ADA widths. About 700 or a third of those were immovable. Because we use the LiDAR data, it could be representing a sandwich board that happened to be there that day. So the movable ones we don't look at as much as what we would consider immovable. 11,000 curb ramps in the city of Elgin, and about 2,800 are ones with conditions that may require replacement. And what I want to say about some of those is while it's big numbers, it doesn't mean anything that anybody did anything wrong. One, as this picture on the right shows, we went out and looked at several recent projects the city had done because we first want to make sure what's being constructed brand new is meeting the requirements. You definitely are. You've also made incredible progress over the years with your street resurfacing program, and in that, the law requires you to replace and upgrade curb ramps that are non-compliant in there. You could have built a curb ramp 10 or 15 years ago that was 100% correct, and the standards have changed. And so again, nobody did anything wrong back then, and as we're saying, this is a snapshot in time. Add another winter, add a big truck making a right turn too tight, and you can see how all infrastructure can get damaged that way. When we look at the overall maps of that, you're in really good shape overall. So again, don't feel bad about those numbers. A unique thing we were able to get from the LiDAR data is identification of specific driveways, because the same ADA requirements for slopes and other things when a sidewalk crosses the driveway also apply there. We don't get that data from a lot of data sets, but you have 25,000 driveways in the city, and about a fourth of those have some sort of need eventually from a ADA standpoint. And then traffic signals and the rapid flash beacons, the yellow flashers, you manage a total of 49 of those. The recent project at Dundee and Summit, if you go out there and press the buttons, you will push it and you will hear wait, 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 walk sign is on to cross Summit. That's what's called an accessible pedestrian signal, and it's there primarily for people with vision disabilities. That's the one that's recently upgraded. And so, for example, when we recommend a project, would say to Mike, hey, maybe you go out and try to find grant funding to do the remainder of your signals, or do them in batches instead of waiting till places are rebuilt for that. So that's the type of project that isn't sidewalk from point A to point B. That's part of this process. So when we take all of that data, the miles of sidewalks, the thousands of curb ramps, we did what was called a heat map to show the relative intensity of locations where more of that might be concentrated based on what we measured. So where you would see the darker purple indicates perhaps a higher level of need in some of those areas. And again, we used this to help inform how we identified and prioritize some of the projects. I will say with this is a very literal examination. For example, a sidewalk or a curb ramp is not supposed to have what's called a cross slope of greater than 2.1%, and that's kind of the side slope if you think of airplane wings. When you have hills and you have terrain and you start to bring in 36 different measurements at a single curb ramp, the chances it's going to be 100% correct is not usually the case. So something might show literally that it has a challenge, but it could just be somebody had to make a decision in the field because you were dealing with slopes and other issues. So again, not that anybody did anything wrong, and it might be the kind of thing that if Mike's doing a project on that street, they're going to go out, look at them closer and go, you know, we couldn't do anything better with this curb ramp, and we'll check it off as being what we would call compliant to the maximum extent feasible. So priority routes. Our goal was to take all those thousands of data points and go, hey, where do you start? What are the highest priorities? So we took input from the public and mapped map where they had specific concerns, surveys, and then the steering committee, as well as a review by Mike and the team with the active mobility plan. The hotspots I just showed you were used as another way to inform places within high concentration areas of the demographic data I talked about, and then places that we would consider highest impact. And I apologize that the fonts didn't come through on this system. But it's basically saying, hey, if I have an issue where there's a curb ramp or a driveway or a sidewalk that's in bad shape, that's much different and much riskier on a place like McLean Boulevard than it is on, say, one of the side streets going into McLean. So we kind of said, hey, from a safety and risk standpoint, that's going to also inform what our priorities might be in those. So that's what this map represents. There's 20 different routes on here, and the color codes, kind of the darker red or darker orange, are what we would call the tier 1 priority projects. That would be the highest priority ones. So you can see the lines for those, and then what we would call the downtown zone, essentially from Kimball to the south is kind of encompassed in that. But a lot of that is related to some minor repairs, your signs, all of the folding stop signs that are there with pedestrian push buttons can create challenges for people with vision disabilities. So there's actually vertically folding ones that can help remedy that situation. And so this is kind of your guidebook of where to pursue things. And I know in talking with Mike, what he's interested in is using this to also help inform and prioritize your street resurfacing program, knowing there's great needs there. So if it's also an ADA need, and we have pavement condition and drainage and other needs, and I think he's going to talk to you about one project that is the McClure Street one that's a priority in this. You're probably going to be remedying that in the next couple of years with that particular contract. Other examples of this, of just the main street out here, Kimball, you know, the streetscape and everything that was done probably 20 or 25 years ago. Some of you may remember that. Overall, it's starting to deteriorate just from aging and probably needs kind of a full rebuild, not all ADA, but just an infrastructure condition. So that's why we drew that project out separately from the downtown zone that was there. Other recommendations, one of the things that it's called a transition plan is to show you're making progress towards the priority routes based on a combined estimate of those projects of around $6 million. We came up with a recommended goal of to put $500,000 a year toward these. Now that doesn't mean additional budget money going toward it. It can be rolled into other things that you were already doing. Like the McClure project was already being planned. It also means you can supplement that by grants, and we do know there's been several success stories of pursuing grant funding to say, hey, not only is this project important for all these other reasons, it's also a priority in our ADA plan, and for funding sources, they tend to see that kind of equity and concern as maybe a higher ranking than another community competing for the same dollars. I mentioned the traffic signal system upgrades. And then downtown, we looked at on-street parking because there are requirements for creating accessible or what's sometimes called handicap or disabled parking spaces. The law doesn't do a very good job considering the spaces in parking lots and parking garages. And it's a ratio of roughly around 1 in 30. So for every 30 spaces, you need to have one that is accessible. Where you have them off street and closer to your downtown businesses, that wouldn't be as much of a concern. It's really the street, I apologize, Mike, that's on the east side of DuPage Court, where they just did the plaza. Spring. That block is probably, those 2 blocks are probably the farthest from other public parking. So if there was one that we're going to say, hey, if you're going in there and do work, try to figure out an accessible on-street parking space, that would be the block to focus on there. Things like work zone and snow management practices, a lot in the report just kind of talks about what the requirements are for those. That's not to strike any fear. You're not expected to go out and plow every sidewalk, but coming up with priority routes and understanding some of the federal requirements there would help. And then coordinate priorities with the active mobility plan. There might be streets, say that they recommend, I'll use McLean as an example, that a future recommendation would be to maybe upgrade one side of McLean to have a pathway instead of a sidewalk. And so that would be the type of thing that if you were going out to do a project for other purposes in the meantime, maybe you don't address all of the ADA needs knowing that it's likely going to be reconstructed in a few years, or you may just decide to hold off on that. We did not make such recommendations in this plan in terms of what the street should be in terms of sidewalk or pathway. The active mobility plan did that. So what's next? Finalizing the report and sending it out to the stakeholders, the public, and advertising it through the city's public engagement site and social media for a 30-day public comment period. Give it to the active mobility plan consultants for their incorporation. And then right now looking at city adoption, most likely via executive action. And then after that, implementation. A progress report is required under the law at least every 5 years, and that can serve as an update to the plan, and probably in another 10 to 15 years to maybe go out and do a more comprehensive update of the plan. So with that, certainly stand for any questions, or Mike, any clarifying points?
Any questions for this time? Mr. Dixon.
I didn't have a question, I was just going to point out, City of Elgin back in 2005 was the second municipality in the state of Illinois to identify all sidewalk locations, ramping, curb cuts, or ramps. We completed that work in 2 years, and pleases me to know that we're still at the forefront of the changes and not waiting to be told what to do, getting ahead of the game. So thank you for your initiative on this.
Yeah, thank you. And probably clarify too, this type of plan does provide some level of legal protection for the city. That's kind of this other piece of it, to be able to say, hey, you're not fixing the ramp on my street. Well, we're working toward our priorities, and we have an implementation fund to our priorities. You should always consider an individual request when it comes in, but if somebody's going to say, I'm going to sue you because you didn't do this ramp, this says, no, we're working toward our priorities. That ramp is a lower priority. That's where, you know, you get some legal protection if you ever get into a larger issue with that. And yeah, having done it 20 years ago or so, also probably ahead of the curve at that time. So I know a couple other questions, sorry.
Mr. Dixon.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, gentlemen. I do have a question. I just want to clarify something that you said earlier. If you can expound on this. You were saying that in, you know, Bowes Road you gave as an example as an arterial road where a sidewalk does not exist, but maybe in the future we should actually build one versus correct some previously, you know, built older sidewalks. So what's the rationale behind that? Because in my mind, I would want to correct the mistakes versus building a new one. So what's the rationale?
It's going to be conditional, but it's saying that the ADA, when it was written, and some of these requirements are probably a little more geared to something like the city of Chicago, where it's this fixed footprint and a fixed set of sidewalks. And so they only really looked at literally existing conditions in comparison to compliance. And all it is as the city, you are allowed to debate and say, man, we think creating a safer condition on a Bose Road or a place without a sidewalk is more important for our city. Just to use an example, if a person in a wheelchair might be challenged to use the sidewalks on an existing street, but they're forced to use the street in that condition, and that's why you might make that decision and that consideration in the future.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you for that. And you had mentioned driveways in the presentation, and are we solely talking about home driveways that need the city portion of those driveways that need some reconfiguration, or are we talking about other types?
Both. Commercial
Both, okay.
driveways where it looks more like a curb return or a curb cut or an intersection that might have slope issues, and residential driveways. What we typically recommend as a best practice is if you're going out and doing what's called an alteration, you're altering the street, you're not expected to triple the budget of resurfacing to address all the ADA needs. And so the first priority is curb ramps because that's under the law. And then other features like sidewalk conditions and driveways are something to look at and then make a determination if you can do that. Under the law, you can apply what's called a 20% cap to alterations. So if we're, say, spending $1 million to resurface, we can cap the ADA upgrades at $200,000. You can go beyond that. That's your choice. But again, from a legal protection standpoint, you can cut it off there. What I would suggest on the driveways is if you're on streets with just common resurfacing and it's a residential driveway, do your best to repair if you can. 50 years of salt on a driveway is going to deteriorate the surface conditions pretty rapidly out there, and that's where a lot of the issues are. If you're on a major road, it might be something that waits till redevelopment of that property simply because the impacts to make a commercial driveway fully correct could have much greater property impacts that maybe you're just not equipped to handle right now from a financial standpoint.
Okay. And lastly, when it comes to the highest risk, highest impact areas that you have identified, and maybe this wasn't a part of your analysis, and maybe Mr. Pubens, this is a question for you to answer, but for those specific things, what is the timeline of repair that we would be looking at to address the issues that we know we have to get to sooner rather than later?
I guess I would say from the priority projects we identified, those are roughly in 5 to 7 year bunches from a planning perspective. So in the schedule, it will say, try to address tier 1, those 5 or 6 projects between now and 2023 or 2024. That would be that piece. I think other repairs that may occur is maybe something Mike can address.
I think it was said, many of these are a matter of degrees. So I think if we have any high risk, those that have the majority of the criteria that are measured or out of standard, we would focus on those sooner. One goal of mine is to use this as another layer that we put into the process as we're looking at our overall transportation capital improvement program. Instead of just focusing on pavement condition, let's now overlay ADA needs, let's overlay the active mobility plan and try to see collectively where the greatest needs are. So, we've been addressing ADA continually before this as part of all of our resurfacing. It's mainly focused on intersection ramps, not so much on the intermediate sidewalks in between, not so much on driveways, but, we're in the beginning of this process. There's a lot of data still to digest, to figure. I don't believe we have any what I would call critical need areas that we have to say. And again, as Manager Kozel pointed out, the city prior to my joining, the staff did an outstanding job at just getting us into a high level of ADA compliance by building all the ramps. So we're in pretty good shape, but it'll be over the course of years. And one of the slides had mentioned, perhaps a $500,000 budget for ADA. In my mind, that doesn't necessarily have to be new money. That could be just a portion of what we're already applying from our local road, our local street and our collector street programs, because a portion of that we're already using. It may not be 500,000, maybe 100,000 that's already going into ADA improvements, so,
All right, very well, thank you.
thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Steffen?
Yeah, thank you. Don and Mike, thank you, and Jorge for being here. Couple questions. I think it was answered, but I wanted to make sure. So the driveway issue, I mean, that kind of jumped out at me. 25% of our driveways are incompliant. Aside from the condition of the surface, the spalling and the breaking apart and cracking, it's mostly sloping. It's like too steep beyond the, you said 200%.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
generally,
Which you can't really do much about, but.
yeah, if you have a sidewalk that is buffered or detached from the street, those are a lot easier to remedy simply because you have more space to work with versus here's the street, here's the curb, here's the sidewalk, here's a retaining wall.
Right.
You know, and that. So making that 100% correct might not always even be feasible. And if you get into property side impacts to change those slopes, again,
Right.
you can run into a feasibility issue there. So yes, the number is big, but to overcome that might even be impractical from a system
Right,
standpoint.
Right, okay. I wanted to make sure I understood that right.
Yeah.
And the other question I had, Mike, I'm glad you brought up the supplemental slides, informational slides, because I'm
Yeah.
at the one on sidewalks. And this one jumped out at me too. I'm looking, I like that you have Randall Road pretty much down the center of the slide to kind of show where everything is, but I'm looking at everything in there, what I consider new Elgin, which is built over the last 30 years. That's the one.
Is that this slide?
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
one. And I'm seeing a lot of the stuff west of Randall Road, Highland Glen, Providence, Copper Springs, all those, Bowes Creek, and its golf course, and then Ponds of Stony Creek. But I'm looking at those, and I see a lot of yellow, I see a lot of red, orange, and I think the worst, the significant accessibility is pink, but it's, the guide, it doesn't look pink, but on the map, they look pink. I just want to make sure I've got that right.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I see a lot of stuff west of Randall Road that has accessibility issues, either minor, limited, or significant. So my question is, why, is there something we should be doing when we are approving new development to make sure that this doesn't appear? I mean, to me, that's kind of shocking that we have relatively new developments that have ADA problems. Should I be concerned? Is that, what's the?
No, it's not uncommon.
Okay.
A couple of things there. One, for sidewalks especially, if you get over a half inch of change between one sidewalk joint
Like
and
settling or a
another,
root pushing it up? or
that's
something?
gonna create an issue. So again, from a weathering standpoint, that's out there. There might be minor slope issues, again, from settling, or, hey, if the tolerance is, if the standard is 2.1 and something is 2.4 or 2.5, is it necessarily the biggest risk? No. Is it still a compliance challenge? It might be. And then the other piece, I think if you talk to anybody in Public Works, concrete today is not as good as it was 100 years ago. And
Or in Roman
they're
times.
working in another city here in the region, a subdivision that's less than 10 years old, probably had the most red dots in theirs from a
Okay.
sidewalk heave and cracking. So my guess is, from what I've seen, they were probably constructed correctly. There might be minor things up there, but overall, conditions and weathering are the likely culprit. Anything?
Another one I would add that is fairly common is the truncated domes. That warning pattern at the end has changed numerous times over the years. So
Right.
that pattern that was, again, approved 20 years ago, one of my first projects when I started in IDOT in the late, 80s was working on the first ADA standards in the district. And at that time, it was still the stamped, right, the
Right, you'd
crosshatch,
stamp it
right?
right into
They
the
just
cement,
stamp it right
right.
in there. And so it's changed a lot. So I think most of what you're seeing would be considered relatively minor, as Don said. Settlement, minor slope issues,
So
warning
not to be
pads, those
concerned,
types.
okay.
There's no gaping holes out there or corkscrew jumps that anyone has to make.
Or
Another
something we
thing-
should be doing on our end, when we approve these developments? There's nothing, I mean,
No, I think
this
that-
is just
yeah.
aging and that kind of stuff, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
would say from what I've seen of new stuff being constructed and doing a scan of that, again, stuff that's being built is done well. I even, for the trainings and nationwide work we do in this, whenever I see somebody figuring out slopes at a corner where there's a grade on the street one way and there's 3 grades tying in, and somebody's done it right, we put that in our training videos, and I can say I've got a few of those from here. Oh, it's not, one other thing came to mind for some of those that could also be an issue, and I just don't know the policy timeline. If the sidewalks were built under a requirement for only 4-foot wide sidewalks, they would be flagged as an issue because the requirement is weirdly, if it's 4 foot, you need to have at least a 5-foot wide passing space every 200 feet. And we would typically say, just make your new sidewalk requirements 5 feet, because who wants to have to check and deal with that? And
Right.
so if you had a subdivision that was under an older policy or something that had 4-foot sidewalks, that could be where you're seeing maybe full-length stuff. I just don't know that particular area or place you're referring to well enough.
Got it. Thank you.
Anything else? Ms. Alfaro?
Thank you for the presentation. I just have one quick question. Because you had mentioned for one handicap spot for every 30 parking spots, and you mentioned Spring Street, if we end up remodeling or anything, considering parking spots. So looking at downtown, where else would you identify gaps?
So in this map, if we just take the very literal measurements, the blocks, it's what's called a block perimeter is how ADA looks at it. And again, square blocks are kind of easy to define, block perimeter. The moment you don't have them, it gets more difficult. So the blocks that are here in brown would be ones that if we weren't considering adjacent off-street parking lots or parking garages, would be the blocks that would not meet that ratio and need 2 additional ones. The darker green would mean 1, and then the areas that are crosshatched with the green
Zero.
are showing no requirements. So when you see the blue Ps that are on there of where that public parking exists, in adjacent to most of those blocks, it's not in bad shape. It's just that one 2-block area of Spring Street that has a greater distance
Okay.
from the others.
That's helpful to know. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you very
guys.
much.
Yeah, thanks.
Mr. Manager?
Yep. Item B is the McClure Avenue resurfacing project. This is a design engineering services agreement with Engineering Enterprises, Inc. That company will be providing design engineering services for a portion of the 2026 neighborhood street resurfacing and collector street resurfacing programs. That includes various residential and collector streets located on the city's west side. EEI's design work will be focusing on pavement repairs, milling, resurfacing, roadway drainage, and as Mr. Kostlik said, ADA sidewalk upgrades. Upon completing the design engineering services, the city will be advertising and awarding construction contract to perform the street resurfacing during the 2026 construction season.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez.
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Powell. Yes. Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0.
Moving to the east side of the city, item C is the Shales Parkway and East Side Streets Resurfacing Project. This is a design engineering services agreement with Fehr and Associates. Similar to the one that we talked about before, Fehr will be focusing on pavement repairs, milling, resurfacing, roadway drainage, and ADA sidewalk upgrades as well. Portions of North Gifford Street, Jefferson Street, Martin Drive, Chippewa Drive, Duncan Avenue, River Bluff Road, Prospect Boulevard, Augusta Avenue, and the south continuation of Shales Parkway are contemplated in this project.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Mr. Dixon?
Yeah, I just want to compliment city staff on both of these. In both of these instances, there are 2 different contractors doing different work on different sides of the town, and so I just always like to see that diversity and that, we're not just focusing in on one contractor. And also, I just want to point out that this work is scheduled to be completed later on this fall on both sides of the city, and so I appreciate that.
What do they say, Mr. Poobins? There's 2 seasons in Illinois, construction season and winter, so we're out of the gates fast, starting to do the work for 2026. There we go.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Item D are public improvements and easement. Oh, excuse, I'm sorry, okay.
Anything else?
Excited.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Powell? Yes. Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 9-0.
This is all engineering services and public services all the time. Item D, public improvements and easement acceptance at 1415 Madeline Lane. The building expansion at this location required the removal and vacation of an existing water main, followed then by the construction of water main, sidewalk, and associated easements. The proposed easements allow the city to enter the private property to operate, maintain, and repair the public water main, in addition to maintaining the public sidewalks. Public improvements being accepted include water main, valves, valve vaults, fire hydrants, and the sidewalk.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Ms. Alfaro?
I had a question for staff. Why didn't we talk to the owner, given that we're trying to do these improvements and to have easier access to their property?
I'm not sure that I understand the question, I'm sorry.
Given that we're doing this, an easement, we're doing all these renovations in order to get access to the space?
Now,
Right.
there was an addition that this property was expanded, and it impinged on areas where the city had water main.
Right.
So we worked with them to accommodate their new building footprint, move the water main sidewalks to other locations, and this is part of the improvement. So this was a negotiated settlement. We worked hand in hand with the
Before-
developer before
okay.
all this happened.
So that's the reason why we didn't probably talk to them, because we already have an agreement already in place.
Well, we
No,
did
we
talk
did
to them
talk
to
to
reach
them.
this agreement.
That's what I was asking.
Oh,
So-
sorry,
Oh,
yeah.
because it said that when I asked, like, interested persons contacted, it said none. That's why I was a little surprised.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was part of it. Yeah, and
Okay.
that's, no.
So I just want to make sure, okay.
No, they were at the table for
Okay.
all of this with these negotiations.
Okay.
We didn't do anything, well, they may not have wanted to remove or relocate a
Right.
water main, but in order to get the building footprint that they needed.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, the motion's approved 9-0.
Item E is a fleet procurement authorization resolution. This will authorize staff to purchase and equip 39 vehicles and multiple pieces of field equipment necessary to support the public works, utilities, land management, parks and recreation, neighborhood services, building maintenance, cultural arts and special events, and police departments. All the proposed purchases are included within the city's 2026 adopted budget. This procurement method was implemented during the pandemic to address supply chain-related disruptions and has since evolved into a proven and efficient model for the city's large-scale vehicle and equipment purchasing. While most pandemic-area conditions have subsided, current market realities continue to require a flexible procurement process to remain competitive and secure budgeted assets. With this authorization, staff will be using joint purchasing agreements, competitively priced contracts, and off-the-lot purchases when necessary to align with the manufacturer availability and ordering windows that staff wants to accomplish. Staff will continue providing a year-end report detailing expenditures to ensure transparency and accountability, and Public Works Director Aaron Neal is here to answer any questions the council may have on this big-ticket item.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Mr. Steph?
No, I just have a comment. I appreciate as we implemented this after COVID because of the need to be able to just buy a vehicle right away and not have to come back to council for review and approval. We did ask that a report come in, and we got one from last year. I just want to point out that they came in 9% under budget, so there were savings that they managed to, as our staff is known to do, managed to find, and we got what we approved last year at about $424,000 less than what we had approved. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the report and showing us, what was bought and where they were bought and so forth. So those were my comments.
Okay. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, thank you. I thank you for coming up, Aaron. Great job with this, and I know it wasn't just you, it was, multiple departments working in conjunction with each other. This procurement process, procurement method that you were that's being talked about here in the method, in the memo, seems like, it's something we can probably bundle up and sell to other municipalities because it
That's the
seems,
intent. That's the intent.
it seems like a really special process that
Yeah.
we kind of like, fell into almost because of the pandemic, as Councilman Stefan pointed out. But, just for the public, so that they can understand the significance of this and, the savings that we have and the flexibility now, can you talk a little bit about what we used to do and now what we are doing and what that improvement is?
Yeah, so prior to the pandemic, we used to do sequential approvals for vehicles. So we would order a vehicle, we'd submit a legal request to Chris Beck and his team. They would draft a purchase agreement for us. We would then get the purchase agreement executed by the vendor. We would write a singular COW memo, and we would buy one vehicle, or we would buy 5 vehicles. And we'd bring each one of those vehicles and those approval sets in front of the city council. Upon my time taking over fleet management for the city in 2018, that individual process was happening by each individual department head. Mark Malatz and Nora Bertram's and Jen Hermanson's, for instance, were doing their own vehicle procurements. It was a very cumbersome process, and it brought a lot of vehicles and rather perfunctory approvals to the council. So I wanted to, prior to the pandemic, bring all of that back into house, into Public Works. So individual user departments would request vehicles through the budget, they would get approved, and then I would say, let me know what you want. I will combine all of the documentation, and as a Public Works department, we will procure the vehicles. You guys focus on what is your main process. That worked through the early pandemic, through 2020. Every vehicle prior to the pandemic, whether it be our most custom snowplow vehicle or a pursuit-rated squad car, we would order in February, we would have it in hand by the end of the year. When the pandemic hit and the national supply chain constraints hit, every vehicle, from a Ford Explorer to a snowplow, came to a halt. Government contracts were canceled, dealerships were not selling to municipalities, there was very low inventory, and we were in a conundrum. We had millions of dollars to spend and we couldn't get our hands on vehicles. At that point, during that process, we would find a vehicle that would be on a lot at Ron Hopkins Ford. And we would go to Ron Hopkins and say, hey, you have 2 Explorers, we need them, we need to replace 2 Ford Explorers. These are just people movers, they're not specialty vehicles, we just need them. They would say, sure. I said, okay, give me 6 weeks. I'll be back, because I have to go to legal, I have to get a purchase agreement, I have to write a memo, I have to come to the city council, and by the time I got in my car and they seen my taillights, they had sold that vehicle, right? So now, how do we take an improved process that took everything from individual departments and brought it to Public Works, and now move into an era where we need authorization? I need approval. City staff cannot spend more than $25,000 without some level of approval from the city council. So we transitioned into, and with the assistance of Public Services Director Mike Pubens, who used a very similar process in his previous place of employment, put together all of the budgeted assets and said, let's take it to council, and it's a large approval. Tonight you're approving $4.7 million of authorization for the Department of Public Works to go out and buy vehicles, right? That's a lot of money, but there are checks and balances in place. Upon that approval, I now have the ability to offer notices of intent. The elected body has says we can expend this money. So now I can go to a vendor and say, I have a notice of intent to procure. In some instances, we still buy off the lot, and now with this council approval, I can take the resolution that is going to be a result of this, take it to Deb Naraki, and Deb Naraki can cut a check for a vehicle that is on the lot at Ron Hopkins Ford, and I'll have a check within 2 days. Right? So we cut out a lot of the red tape, but this process was initially driven by pandemic-related needs. We needed the ability to secure vehicles. We've been doing this in 2023, 24, 25, and now 26. And what we found is that the market is beginning to level. It's beginning to stable. In 2025, every vehicle that we ordered that was outside of a specialty snowplow truck, we ordered in March. We received it by the end of the year. So we're seeing the market starting to taper off a little bit. But the ability to work within now windows that exist from Ford. Ford may offer under joint procurement contracts access to a Ford Escape from September 1st until October 15th. I need to have the authority and authorization to put that order in with the vendor who has the contract in order to get those state bid pricing. Through this process, what it's also provided to us is we still, in 2025, we used all $4.4 million of joint contract money. Contracts that were in dealerships that bid through public procurement contracts, suburban purchasing, Omnia, the state of Illinois, and we purchased 42 vehicles last year, all of which used normal contracting, Illinois approved, or approved under our procurement ordinance. We didn't have to buy anything off the lot last year. In the event we cannot buy off of one of these contracts, it is at that point we will then source locally. We'll go to Ron Hopkins Ford, we'll go to St. Charles, we'll try to find something on the lot. So all of this, it's still a lot of work for us on the back end, but $4.4 million, a single approval, and then we come back next year and tell you what we bought. So that's the long story, Councilman.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate it. And this is a joint procurement master contract process, and we're doing all this. And if I may be mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Councilwoman Powell might have might have mentioned this before in the past. Am I correct with that, prior to 23?
I always have wonderful ideas, probably.
Way to wing that one.
All right.
Good answer.
Well, yeah, but anyways, I'm glad that I'm glad that we're saving money, doing it this way too. And so, hopefully we can continue to do so. So great job, and I just really like the idea of everything being managed through one procurement process. That's totally simplifies this for us, and I'm sure for the public, who have had a chance to listen to this. So thank you, Aaron.
Anything else? Ms. Powell?
I just want to say kudos to staff for doing, it's a lot of money for us to approve, but it's important because of all the things that you mentioned in terms of, how competitive it is to get a lot of these vehicles and pieces of equipment, and we need to be able to move quickly to do that. I'm glad that we're doing this and we are continuing to do this, even though the supply chain seems to be loosening up and working out a little bit better. As long as, it sounds like we're still also going through a lot of joint purchasing contracts to make sure that we're getting the most competitive price.
Yes.
I think that's probably what the public is most concerned with. Are we, just going to a local dealership and just taking what's on the lot, or are we still looking to see what are the most competitive prices that are out there? And we are, and as you mentioned, looking at what we spent last year, we were under budget. So I definitely approve and love the innovation that continues to come from our team. Things like this make it easier for you to do your job and for us to make sure you have the tools to do your job.
Indeed, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we have a motion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Announcements from the council. Mr. Dixon.
Thank you. I wanted to just take the time to speak to the community. Last month in December, we had a discussion around welcoming city ordinances, and we gave direction to staff to produce that ordinance by today's meeting, and it's not on the agenda to be discussed. And I wanted to let the public know that we are still working on that. This was not a staff issue. This was not a city attorney issue. Councilwoman Alfaro and I brought this ordinance forward to be discussed, and it's not a Councilwoman Alfaro issue either. There was a miscommunication that ultimately falls on my shoulder as your elected leader, and so now we have cleared up some things, and we will be bringing the ordinance back in February. So we should have a draft in about a couple of weeks, and there's just a lot more conversations that are going to continue to be had with council members, city staff, of course, and community members, absolutely, over the next few weeks. And so I just wanted to clarify some of that, and I heard Ms. Lischke come up here earlier, and I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't staff, it wasn't the council or the city or anything like that. That the ultimate responsibility falls on my shoulder, and and so that was I dropped the ball on that, and so, but we're constantly working every day to rectify that and get it right, to get something that is really reflective of this council, the residents, and the great work of the city staff. So just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Stefan?
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had, so I'm glad. Thank you, Corey, for answering that. The other, not necessarily announcement, but suggestion I would put out there as we continue to consider how to address this is I would like us to consider prohibiting anybody who works for ICE to apply to be an Elgin police officer. I would like to see if we could make that happen for anybody who has applied to be an ICE officer, or well, actually any DHS office, Border Patrol, all the different agencies during either the Trump administrations, because anybody, in my opinion, anybody who's applied to be one of those officers is not somebody that I would consider worthy of being a member of our police department. So that's my suggestion. I'm just going to throw that out there and let people stew on it, and we'll think about it. Thanks.
Mr. Ortiz?
I just have one question. What was the miscommunication, so I know?
I'm just going to say there was a miscommunication that was my responsibility.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into greater detail than that, but ultimately it just falls on me, so it's on me.
All right. I guess was any of this in writing? We talked about this earlier, and I said I wasn't going to ask any questions, but the miscommunication is just what's getting to me, is that what is it? Because we gave the direction to come back, like you said, and it's not here. So and you said staff didn't drop the ball, and Ms. Alfaro didn't, and then you're taking the responsibility, which I appreciate. Just want to know, like, were we speaking different languages? Well, not like per se like Spanish and English, but like, did it like fly over our heads, then we just missed something?
Us? No. Again, it just falls back on me.
All right.
I missed something.
All right. Thank you, man.
Okay. Anything else from the council? Anything from staff?
None, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moving second to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, we are adjourned. We'll reconvene a regular council meeting in 5 minutes. City Council for January 28th, 2026 to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro,
Here.
Dixon,
Present.
Good,
Here.
Martinez,
Here.
Ortiz, Powell,
Here.
Stefan,
Here.
Thorne,
Here.
Mayor Captain.
Here. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of January 14th.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion, corrections, or additions? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Martinez,
Yes.
Ortiz, Powell,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Thorne,
Yes.
Mayor Captain.
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. We have no communications this evening. We have one public comment. Louis Willens.
Unprecedented times require unprecedented courage. And it's not easy, but that's needed for the city. It's needed from all of us. No, I'm not asking for the courage of a Nicole Good or of an Alex Preddy, although we have some people in this community who show that courage, who are role models for us. At some of the city council meetings, I've heard, of course I've heard, some fear. I've heard fear about being sure to follow the law from the mayor, right? You know, last time he mentioned, you know, we have to follow the law, we have to follow the law. And rightly so. But there's what the law says you must do. There's what the law says you can't do. And then there's room in the middle. And those are areas in which we can find courage as a city. I've heard from a city council member a fear that they might cut our funding for our bridge, which is in good repair. And, you know, a researcher on fascism, Timothy Snyder, maybe you've read this book. His first lesson is do not obey in advance. If they take your funding for your bridge, you sue the bastards. So I'm leaving this book, if I may, with the person who made those comments. It's a great read. You're all on our side. You know, so don't obey in advance. All right? We need courage from our police department, right? In these unprecedented times, they're fearful about approaching an ICE officer, but that's their job. Their primary responsibility is to ensure law and order in our communities, and if someone is unknown, it leaves us with that dilemma of what happens if you see someone being abducted on the street. If someone is unknown, you ask them to stop and identify themselves. That's not obstructing, that's following the law. You might remember medieval times, right? At the city gate. You know, the city officers would ask people to stop and identify. And if they are the king's men, be that as it may, but they are that front line and they ensure law and order in our city, they ask them to stop and identify. And I know they're listening. So thank you for all you do. And we also have you. You are our champions. Now, courage doesn't come stupidly. It comes from having power behind you. As a city, it comes from having the strong support of legal counsel, state's attorney, city lawyers, so that and we've seen this in Minneapolis and Philadelphia. So when they assert themselves strongly, they do it with the full force of law. You are our champions, you are our tribunes. And we're lucky for that. And we need you to be that.
Thank you. Brings us to bids. First item is bid number 25-063, Year 5 lead service line replacement program, St. Charles Street.
Move to award the bid to Triumph Construction Corporation of St. Charles, Illinois for Year 5 lead service line replacement program in the amount of $630,000 Yeah, 630,000, 630,800. I couldn't get that number out.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Brings us to other business. We have one item, authorization for payment to Condenser People Incorporated.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Mr. Ortiz?
Number 10, I've seen the owner sitting back there. He's come to the liquor commission a few times. This liquor license is for the new establishment over in DuPage Court. And he's been working with Mr. Back, Corporation Counsel, and come to a few liquor commissions to give out his business model and his detailing. It seems like he has a legit, good, strong footing of what he's planning on doing. So just want to say that he's been a liquor commission a few times, and he's shown us his business model. So I'll be supporting that, even though it's not consent.
Thank you. Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Miscellaneous business.
Move approval. Second.
Moved and second for approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, motion's approved 9-0. Announcements, the next committee of the whole meeting will be Wednesday, February 11th, 2026, at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. The next regular meeting of the Elgin City Council will be Wednesday, February 11th, 2026, at 7 p.m. in the council chambers. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Alfaro?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Ortiz?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Thorne?
Yes.
Mayor Captain?
Yes, we are adjourned.